The Guillotine Chronicles, France's most macabre spectator sport. The guillotine in France wasn't just an execution method, it was the ultimate spectator sport. Imagine combining the excitement of the Macy's Day Parade, the festive atmosphere of a Super Bowl tailgate party, and the frenzied energy of villagers hunting Frankenstein's monster with torches and pitchforks. This blood-soaked spectacle was what Parisians lived for in those dark times. Today, we're diving deep into the mysterious guillotine era that haunted France's history. But before we journey into this shadowy past, make sure to subscribe to our channel, Weird History from the World. Drop a comment below telling us what other bizarre historical enigmas you're dying to explore. Now protect your neck, we're heading to France. What many don't realize is that while France officially retained the guillotine until the late 1970s, specifically September 10, 1977, public executions were banned nearly 4 decades earlier on June 17, 1939, following the execution of Eugene Weidmann, convicted of 6 brutal murders. As Weidmann approached the guillotine and took his final position, the atmosphere turned electric. A rowdy Parisian crowd cheered, jeered, and reveled in the macabre spectacle with disturbing enthusiasm. The execution took an unexpected turn when someone secretly captured the entire gruesome event on film. This shocking footage prompted the French government to immediately end these public viewing parties forever. Following Weidmann's execution, all guillotine activity in France retreated behind prison walls, taking place exclusively in secluded prison courtyards. This strategic move solved 2 critical problems. First, executioners could finally rely on a properly functioning guillotine. Previously, French prison workers had to repeatedly assemble and dismantle the deadly device like exhausted carnival workers at a county fair. This constant reconstruction meant the guillotine frequently malfunctioned. Triggers would unexpectedly snap or misaligned blades would result in horrifically botched beheadings. A permanent installation allowed for regular maintenance and precise calibration, making death more predictable, if not more efficient. The second problem it addressed was the increasingly uncontrollable crowds. Local bars would overflow with spectators pre-gaming for the upcoming beheading. Opportunistic building owners with prime views of the execution site sold window seats to those seeking a bird's-eye view of the grisly proceedings. Children would dangle precariously from nearby tree branches, desperate for a glimpse of the deadly spectacle. The French government and prison officials finally acknowledged that the guillotine phenomenon had spiraled into something far more troublesome. Yes, a real headache than they had ever anticipated. And how did eager spectators discover these events? Execution notices were prominently posted throughout town, announcing the time and place of the next deadly performance. The guillotine's dark fame, media sensation, and mechanical terror. In some instances, prisons would distribute their own macabre version of press releases to local newspapers, complete with execution scheduling details. Other times, no announcements were made, yet crowds would mysteriously materialize around prison workers assembling the deadly apparatus in the middle of public streets. By the late 1930s, guillotine enthusiasts had earned themselves a reputation for violence rivaling modern football hooligans. Desperate to avoid these bloodthirsty spectators, prison staff would stealthily assemble their guillotine under cover of darkness, performing executions at dawn's first light. Their efforts proved futile. The guillotine's magnetic pole never failed to draw massive crowds. The guillotine itself was a truly menacing sight to behold. We must remember this device represented cutting-edge technology at the time, its unusual appearance both fascinating and terrifying onlookers. Engineered for swift, clean, and supposedly humane death, its angled metal blade hung ominously high above the crowd, ensuring maximum visibility and psychological impact. This intimidating beast embodied brutal efficiency, all lean, no filler. The machine's elegantly simple design featured one tall, narrow wooden rectangle resembling a window frame. But instead of glass, it housed a massive, weighted steel blade that promised a theoretically clean severance. The victim's head would drop almost gently into a woven basket filled with sawdust, a practical touch designed to absorb the inevitable aftermath. The remaining corpse was unceremoniously rolled into a cheap coffin. The mechanical efficiency proved almost as terrifying as the device itself. Among the first sights preceding an execution was the procession of rickety wooden carts transporting condemned prisoners to their fate. During the French Revolution's bloodiest periods, the guillotine achieved such refined efficiency that it could process 12 victims every 13 minutes, keeping those carts perpetually busy. This deadly precision improved over time, largely thanks to Charles-Henri Sanson, France's royal executioner during King Louis XVI's reign, who meticulously tested the machine on animals and cadavers before human implementation. Sanson first publicly demonstrated the guillotine on Nicolas Jacques Pelletier, and the clinical precision with which Pelletier's head separated from his body so impressed Sanson that the device's popularity rapidly spread throughout France. Eventually, the sight of French soldiers, known as gendarmes, leading carts filled with convicted criminals through city streets became the unmistakable signal that the guillotine would soon follow. One horrified eyewitness recounted, "The same carts used in Paris for transporting wood had floorboards placed across them as makeshift seats. On each board sat 2, sometimes 3 victims, their hands bound behind their backs. The constant jolting of the cart caused their heads to nod up and down involuntarily, providing great amusement to the watching spectators. Surprisingly, the crowds surrounding the guillotine weren't always boisterous and rowdy, quite the contrary. It became commonplace to witness groups of women calmly knitting and conversing while gathered around the instrument of death, creating a chilling contrast between domestic normalcy and state-sanctioned execution." The knitting spectators, domestic horror, and the executioner's fame. Known as tricoteuses, these women initially gathered to observe local government debates, but when officials banned them from public assemblies, they discovered the guillotine's macabre entertainment value instead. These female spectators even crafted small commemorative items honoring the day's executions, including the revolutionary Phrygian caps. Despite their seemingly innocent domestic origins, as the French Revolution intensified, these women became increasingly associated with bloodlust and unbridled rage. Historical accounts suggest the tricoteuses developed a particularly violent and hateful reputation that haunted French cultural memory for generations. The executioner himself always commanded center stage in this theater of death, all eyes fixated on this enigmatic figure. Whether viewed as hero or villain, spectators recognized the headsman as the undisputed master of ceremonies, the star player orchestrating the deadly performance. The guillotine's mechanized, hands-off approach to capital punishment created a psychological buffer that allowed executioners to distance themselves from the moral weight of ending human lives. They focused obsessively on the machine's technical aspects rather than contemplating what the device was actually doing to their fellow humans. These same executioners meticulously prepared the guillotine before each execution and diligently cleaned the bloody aftermath, a strange display of professional humility amid such grotesque circumstances. Perhaps most disturbing was how Parisians believed the guillotine's clinical efficiency actually diminished the profound religious and social connections traditionally associated with death and execution. The mechanical speed stripped away the emotional gravity of the spectacle. Ironically, the public initially criticized the guillotine not for its brutality, but for being too sterile and detached. During early guillotine executions, crowds reportedly shouted in protest, "Give me back my wooden gallows," nostalgic for execution methods that paradoxically seemed more humane through their very brutality. On certain occasions, depending on the day's execution schedule, condemned prisoners received the rare opportunity to share final words before meeting the guillotine's angled blade. Many victims' last utterances were meticulously recorded for historical preservation. Perhaps most famous were the words of King Louis XVI who, before his execution in 1793, delivered a powerful speech to the assembled crowd. "I die innocent of all the crimes laid to my charge. I pardon those who have occasioned my death, and I pray to God that the blood you are going to shed may never be visited on France." While officials expected the condemned to maintain stoic dignity when facing death's ultimate threshold, not all prisoners could summon such remarkable composure in their final moments beneath the shadow of the blade. Final moments, royal blood and modern reflections. Louis XV's infamous mistress, Madame du Barry, desperately pleaded with the crowd and her executioner for just one more precious moment of life. Marie Antoinette, according to certain historical accounts, spent her final breath apologizing to her executioner for accidentally stepping on his foot, a haunting display of etiquette at death's threshold. Though the guillotine was engineered to be more humane and less bloody than traditional execution methods, bloodthirsty crowds still gathered with morbid anticipation, craving the visceral spectacle of gore and death. Not all executioners were theatrical, but certain individuals deliberately catered to the crowd's insatiable appetite for blood and spectacle. These particular headsmen would dramatically hold aloft the freshly severed head for the mesmerized masses to witness. When revolutionary Charlotte Corday met her fate via guillotine in 1793, the executioner not only displayed her severed head, but shockingly slapped her cheeks. Witnesses reported her face mysteriously blushed in response. One horrified spectator documented this disturbing phenomenon, noting that the eyes seemed to retain consciousness for a moment or two. A ghastly awareness lingered in their stare as they gazed upon the crowd, suggesting the severed head remained briefly cognizant of its own grotesque situation. The sheer volume of blood and viscera produced by the guillotine created unbearable odors, prompting nearby residents to file numerous complaints about the nauseating stench. Paradoxically, the blood of certain notable victims became macabre souvenirs. When King Louis XVI met his end, frenzied crowds rushed forward to dip their handkerchiefs in the royal crimson pool left behind. While the guillotine may have transformed the spectacle of death, it certainly never diminished its psychological impact on witnesses. How might you react if transported back to witness such a scene? If you resembled the average Parisian, you'd likely find yourself fainting or violently ill. The legendary writer Albert Camus documented his father's traumatic experience witnessing a guillotine execution, an event so profoundly disturbing that it caused the man to vomit uncontrollably and never speak of what he'd witnessed again. According to Camus' powerful reflections on the guillotine, written in 1957, his father observed a convicted murderer's execution in Algiers during World War I. My father arose before dawn, for the guillotine had been erected at the opposite end of the city. Upon arrival, he found himself among a vast crowd of spectators. He never revealed what horrors he witnessed that morning. My mother could only tell us that he returned home in a state of wild distress, refused to speak a single word, collapsed onto their bed, and suddenly began violently vomiting. So we leave you with this haunting question: was the guillotine truly the humane innovation its creators claimed? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to explore our other mysterious historical videos that delve into humanity's darkest chapters. Subscribe now to journey deeper into history's most chilling secrets.